Yart, what's good? I saw this video pop up on my timeline. I was not expecting this video to come out, obviously, yesterday, so I'm making a reaction to it now. I haven't seen it yet. I was doing other Jubilee reactions, and then I saw one that was like more in my wheelhouse that popped up, so I was like, ah, snap, I might as well just do this one too. So I got a lot of shit recorded. I think this like to dislike ratio is pretty funny. I think what's gonna happen after hearing this person on the right speak is that you might understand that anti-fascists are coming from a little bit more reasonable of a place than you realize. Fascists currently in culture, you know, they're kind of, if you want to look at famous fascists, right?
What does a fascist mean? A far-right authorization ultra-analytic, oh my God, ultra-analyst, political ideology movement characterized by dictator leadership, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what the fuck a fascism is. I don't know what the fuck that is. Benito Mussolini and Giviante Gentile and Jason Stanley. Like, who the fuck are these people, bro? Never heard of my fucking life. What is an example of a fascist?
We got Benito Mussolini, yeah, and basically the Axis, right? Anybody who was a part of the Axis during World War II and looking to exterminate Jewish people and the Jewish culture, or burning the extensive trans medical history. It's the opposite of inclusionary, right? These people want to eradicate certain types of people from the earth in order to keep the earth for them. What anti-fascists are people who are on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. So they believe that we should be making way more inclusions for those types of people. We should be caring for those types of people way more. I guess the difference between being Antifa and just being anti-fascist is that Antifa will organize and riot along those same guidelines. And obviously I don't think violence is the answer. I don't think violence is ever the answer. I think there's non-violent answers for everything. It's interesting to see, like, yes, there's people on the alt-right and the Axis, like in the World War II, like Nazi Germany, who were creating concentration camps, rounding up all certain types of people, and again, literally killing them. Opposite end of that spectrum is, hey, I'm gonna kill the people who are rounding up people killing them, you know what I mean? But that's like both ends of that political spectrum. People don't like the political compass. I'll put it up maybe. People say it's not the most accurate, but again, if you look at like socialism or communism is like kind of alt-left and fascism is kind of alt-right. But due to centuries of Red Scare propaganda, people will be like, oh my God, communism is the worst, as opposed to fascism being the problem, which is where we are kind of ramping toward more and more in this country to the day. And again, I don't believe violence to be the answer, but I think you're gonna hear this guy and you're gonna be like, wait, why does he have like good morals? You know?
Violence is justified to achieve these goals?
Good question.
Yes.
Almost all of the people protesting against the Nazis and Klansmen in Charlottesville.
And I guess the flip side again, the KKK alt-right organizers that exist will organize and riot and do the same thing. So there kind of needs to be a counterbalance.
We're peaceful, but not all of them.
I have been involved in anti-fascist organizing and activism for 10 years now, I suppose. I don't think that any person can speak on behalf of a group. So I'm not speaking on behalf of like Antifa as such. I'm speaking on behalf of sort of myself as someone who is anti-fascist.
Obviously he's like hiding his identity, hiding his voice, but you could tell like even the way that he's speaking, he doesn't want to like put anyone down in the way that he's speaking. He's like, look, I don't want to like say that I'm speaking for everybody that I'm part of an organization with or not. I just kind of want to say like, look, this is what I think. Again, you're gonna hear like a very PC, calm. Anti-fascists are definitely like overblown to be, I mean, again, I'm not going to say they're not violent, because again, they literally do organize and create violent riot. The morals on which they stand upon are at least like on the right side of life, you know, and the right side of people, that I think it does translate.
Hi, I'm Emily.
Hi Emily, I'm Casper.
Like the friendly ghost?
Like the friendly ghost.
Love that.
This is my first time hearing about Antifa. What is it?
And that sort of includes the gamut of the bad isms, you know, so anti-racism, anti-transphobia, anti-Islamophobia, anti-sexism. But I think another core tenet of it is probably also anti-capitalism.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, as I would argue, I don't know if, and most people in Antifa would say the same, but again, if fascism is alt-right, I would say most people on the left are like communist socialists. Most people in Antifa are like communist socialists, something like that, one of the two.
Do you consider yourself an
So they don't believe in the current organization of our government, which I don't, who could blame them? It's not working.
But I think another core tenet of it is probably also anti-capitalism.
Do you consider yourself an organization?
No. Antifa is not anything remotely close to an organization.
It's like an entity. I mean, they do organize. They don't like have a headquarters, you know what I mean? They don't like go down to their like secret bunker and all like plan together. They don't go to like their GTA 6 hideout so that way they can go start a heist, you know? The internet has allowed for mobilization of all kinds of people all over the place. Even if you want to look at, again, the opposite end of the political spectrum, January 6th, they were all able to organize and push the Capitol at a time when they didn't all get together at one house and then head over there, you know? They all just planned it over the internet.
It's sort of decentralized and autonomous.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, there's no central decision-making body. In fact, there is no center.
What do you define a fascist as?
It's a bad question. I do like the idea that he said it's autonomous and that there's no center, because again, that is typically the left-leaning principle of there shouldn't be any one leader, right? Like they kind of all move as a unit. They all kind of believe the same thing, and if you're a part of it, you're a part of it. If you're not, you're not.
Someone whose political beliefs and values and the world they're trying to create is one of hierarchy and racialized domination, nationalistic.
Exclusionary based purely upon skin color, sexuality, gender, like whatever it is.
Beliefs and values and the world they're trying to create is one of hierarchy and racialized domination, nationalistic domination, and xenophobia.
I haven't seen anybody react to those words, but it's funny because everything that he's saying right now, like everything that he's standing against right now, is subjectively bad, objectively bad. It is. Xenophobia, like hating someone purely because of the fact that they're not from this country, fucking stupid. Hating someone because of their skin color, fucking stupid. Hating someone because they think that they're a woman and they were biologically born a male at the age of 0 and had no control over it and have been dressing like a woman for the last 20 years of their lives and wants to get the sex change, you go, fuck that person should be eradicated from life. Fucking, you're insane.
From my perspective, Antifa is being portrayed as like government enemy number one, right? Like, oh, Antifa is going against...
That's really interesting. Why? I wonder why anti-fascism organizing is being considered enemy number one to the current U.S. government. Because we've never been a left-leaning government system in our lifetime. We went from monarchs and kings and queens to just capitalists who have more money than God. Nothing's really changed, and they want to make sure that the power remains in their hands, which is why people like Antifa scare them.
Portrayed as like government enemy number one, right? Like, oh,
again, I'm not for violence.
Antifa is going against America. Antifa is destroying the...
You don't hear the same shit about any alt-right groups that show up all the motherfucking time. You don't hear the same shit about how we're funding Israel to blow up Palestine on a religious standpoint, because they don't want people to know that there's an other side of the spectrum.
The American philosophy, I guess, the way of life.
Maybe you feel like this is like a good thing, like you guys want to be known as like big top violent extreme dogs. I don't know, you tell me.
Big top violent extreme dog. I am at no point going to defend the violence in this, right? He hasn't talked much about his like participation in the violence. He's really just been like, look, I don't like xenophobia, racism, and generally speaking, fascists are xenophobic, racist, and they're trying to make sure that certain people don't exist. They're very violently, or maybe passive aggressively through the access of power that they have in our government, being able to whip and control people in a way that they shouldn't.
Yeah, totally. I think nowadays what it is has been largely defined by the media. You can't see me, but I'm wearing like full black bloc.
Because they're not like to be like, oh, do you guys just want to be big, over-the-top, violent, and extreme, known as big top, over-violent, extreme people? No, they're trying to stop overly violent people with violence. It's fighting fire with fire. I agree, it's bad. Look at him right now. Like, nobody's gonna know who the fuck he is. He's wearing a fucking balaclava.
I have a black balaclava on, and I think like that is what Antifa oftentimes means. This militant, black-clad protester.
Do you ever get tired of hiding your identity?
It's kind of fun. actually. Where you can sort of do anything and be anyone you want and not face the consequences of those actions, right? You know, no
I don't love that.
face, no case is sort of this term that gets
You're
thrown
right.
around.
You're right. I mean, if y'all have listened to hip hop, y'all know no face, no case. But yeah, I mean, you definitely don't. I mean, I hope they didn't just cast somebody from Antifa who is like just really about the violence, because again, I think if you talk to a lot of people, granted, unless they are like very actively moving in a certain way, very actively protesting and blowing shit up, you know, damaging property, etc. I should say damaging property of non-capitalistic business owners, right? Like if you have a bajillion dollars and your storefront gets demolished, but you have 50 others across the entire US, you're fine. If you destroy a local business owned by an immigrant family in the middle of New York City, you're fucked up, because that person is not going to be able to financially recover.
With this belief, do you think it allows people to be more violent without consequences?
I think it's a response to violence without consequence. There was already violence with very minimal consequence, because people are very openly racist, openly anti-Semitic. I mean, Kanye West eventually had to watch 21 Jump Street and get his head together, spewed anti-Semitic nonsense and red letter media nonsense to everyone on the planet without any type of restriction on such. You know, he was just really able to say I mean, I saw every little thing from him. You know, like he wasn't getting shadow banned, nothing. He just was doing the shits. Now, if you're against people who are anti-Semitic, then all of a sudden it gets painted in this other light, right? Like there are extreme violent anti-Semitic protesters who will go out of their way to terrorize people of color, you know, like people of certain genders. I mean, we have Ron DeSantis is running on the idea of eradicating trans people from existence, and he's polling 17% in the GOP. To me, it's a direct response to something that is already occurring in our country, right? And like there's people like this all over the place, but the problem is in places like Italy, I believe, which is like leaning quite fascist at the moment, or even Russia, you know, which is leaning a little fascist, you find people in the US defending Russia. You find people in Russia going, yeah, whatever, even though it was something that polled tremendously unpopular before it happened, the war in Ukraine, like there's still people in Russia who are defending it, you know, like there's no need for that. When violence is already occurring, that's like saying Palestinians shouldn't be fighting back, they should just let themselves get fucking bombed to death. But when they start throwing stones back, people go like, hey, stop throwing stones, that's terrorism.
Because I know deep down in my heart and in my soul that it has to be done. The world that we live in today, with all the bombs and all the guns and all the starving people and the pollution, these are all different types of like violences or something that are happening around the world.
I wouldn't like lump pollution in there, despite the fact that I guess global warming is now affecting Maui in a way that we've seen, right? Do disagree here. I think there's very diplomatic ways to solve things. When you're already being bombed, responding back to that is natural and a part of just trying to live.
And I think our capacity for violence is sort of like that which has been taken from us and concentrated in the hands of the police. Memorable experiences of my life was like watching the 3rd Precinct burn to the ground in Minneapolis during the George Floyd uprising. And that was the first time in American history that that's ever happened.
You don't think that kind of causes more fear and irrationalization? Wouldn't that be against what you are for?
Right, a little bit. Like I said, it's in this case literally fighting fire with fire. What they're burning down, again, I don't give a fuck about. I agree that fundamentally the police really are doing nothing but protecting capital and protecting wealth in America. They're not doing anything to protect disenfranchised. In fact, I'd argue they're killing disenfranchised people, be it people of color, men of color, specifically black men of color, are dying very frequently at police hand. Not just in the US, but all over the world. So to burn their shit is not so like, oh, to me. He's right in that it is against what he's standing for specifically. It's inherently hypocritical. You're saying you cannot be taking human lives for account, disregarding human life, right? He's saying that you can't be disregarding human life on a moral grand point. But at the same time, he's going, the police and everyone's whose lives you're fucking up there, like they don't matter. And it's true. You should have been able to solve it diplomatically. In a world where police are killing black men in the street, right? And very actively, again, I remember those George Floyd protests, as most people probably do, all over the internet, and we were all forced to be at home during it and watch it. Police were fighting the fuck back. You understand what I'm saying? Police were getting very active. I mean, police were active with Kai Cenat's fans, the fucking 16, like all 93 fucking underage people, whoever got arrested from the Kai Cenat, like riot in fucking Union Square. Like, the police were violent with them. Imagine police being violent over something that they know they're fucking up on, you know what I mean? Like, half of these police officers just get paid leave. It's just not comparable, you know, to say that someone who is, again, say like trying to make sure that trans people cannot get surgeries or people cannot get things that are justified to them that are minority groups. This is saying that those minority groups can fight back when being fought against. I think it's like a chicken or the egg
Which
scenario.
is like a world where everyone can kind of come together, be, you know, peaceful.
Like, I think the police sort of serve three primary functions. One is like to uphold racialized white supremacy, protect the interests of the capitalist ruling class.
The capitalist ruling class, yes. The white supremacy is inherent with the fact of the capital ruling class because for centuries now, white people have been in control and making sure that they remain in control, specifically white men. There are people who have been able to cross that threshold that aren't just straight white men. There was a lot of games being played to make sure it was just them up until very, very recently, like maybe the last 20 years, if I wanted to be generous.
And the third is to like prevent social movements from being able to change anything.
So then if like I'm in my house, someone breaks in and like I'm in my closet or my bathroom, like who do I call?
Hopefully not the cops, because they don't really seem to help with that much. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I think there's like a million different solutions. What do we do when harm happens in our community? What do we do when people are committing wrongdoings or whatever? And I think the answer to that is like a million different things, but definitely not the police.
Why did you get this guy? I hate that Jubilee casted him so far. Not that he's, like, I believe that he's Antifa. I believe that he's trying. I don't know how they're editing this. He's not doing a fantastic job, like, of answering their concerns.
Whatever. And I think the answer
Basically, I think most Antifa members would argue that there's, again, a lot of options, sure, like he said, but say one of them, dude. Like a neighborhood watch, right? Like, you call your friend, you call your neighbor, you know? All the people around you who, hopefully, you're able to protect yourselves and be in a massive numbers, right? That's just one option. That's not to say that that's the end-all, be-all option. Train police correctly and have a protecting force, sort of like a police force, but maybe ones that aren't designed to disperse crowd control with aggression, practicing to take lives, you know, or like practicing in assault situations. It's unnecessary. You don't need that. All they're typically doing and all they really show up for in mass or with their amount of money that they receive, defunding the police is way more simple to me. But if you look at, like, for instance, police in a very small white suburban town will be not only incredibly funded because they'll have incredibly nice vehicles, they'll have incredibly nice equipment. They're not doing anything other than stopping people in traffic every once in a while. Like, they're not doing shit in a straight white suburban town with like 1,000 people. They're going to be funded like crazy. They're going to be like the biggest financial district of that town. New York City couldn't handle like a fucking 5,000 teenagers for 40 minutes with one Twitch streamer, you know? And when they were trying to handle it, they're smashing their faces in the back of windshields, dispersing with riot control against like 16-year-olds and still being ineffective. They're always asking for more of it is the problem. There's a lot of problems that roll around with the police. I'm not saying that they have to disappear, right? I think that a general watch community makes sense until everybody is kind of financially capable. There's going to be a lot of problems, especially when you're putting most of our government money into people who already have most of it. And like you said, they're not really doing much but protecting more of that money. He's not doing a great job. No disrespect to Casper. But if you're in your bathroom and someone breaks into your house, who do you call? your friends, a neighborhood watch, maybe still the police, but hopefully they don't need 17 SWAT cars. While that's nice and comforting, it's overkill. Or perhaps you just keep a gun in your house, necessarily saying you need an AR-15, but keep a handgun, you know, like keep something for self-defense. The police should be defunded at the very least, but eradicated, I understand. You can't have a take like that and not have a fucking, what I mean, like, how are you gonna say, yeah, the police should be eradicated, but like, there's a million options, just decide.
To that question, I think there's like a million different solutions. What do we do when harm happens in our community? What do we do when people are committing wrongdoings or whatever? And
What's the most extreme thing you've done?
some of the most intense experiences of my life were the resistance against Milo Yiannopoulos in Oakland, who was a right-wing grifter trying to give some public talk that was shut down by anti-fascists.
Like you tried to stop him from talking, or? So I guess it's fair to say you don't believe in free speech?
Well, I don't think...
They put the most right-wing fucking dude next to him. They're exercising free speech in protesting against him, dude. What are you talking about? If they outnumber him, free speech won, brother.
Less important to me than the content of what's being shared. And if what's being shared is calls to violence,
he's like trying to like
anti-Semitism.
You can see it kind of in how he's moving. He's like trying to slam him. I don't
Sexism
understand.
and racism.
Like, I'm not defending violence, right? Like, I don't know how that Milo Yiannopoulos shit ended, but again, that's free speech, brother. Congregation, that's a rebuttal to speech.
Then I don't give a fuck about your so-called free speech.
Do you think it would be okay to
I'm gonna
punch
say especially because that free speech is pretty much hate speech,
a Nazi?
right?
Do you think it would be okay to punch a Nazi?
Hell yeah. Yes, absolutely. We should not cede an inch to those bastards, and when they have the gall to step out of their mom's basement or whatever, we do not give them space in our communities to share their disgusting and toxic and unforgivable opinions.
I thought we agreed on that, like, fucking in World War II, man. Unless the dude's like wearing an armband and like burning a Jew, it's kind of hard to see other than just like skinheads and people who act a certain way. But like,
What are your thoughts
I
on
don't know.
peaceful protests? Do you believe in it?
Like begging the people in power to make a decision that doesn't, fuck everybody over. A lot of that stuff is really degrading. So we're begging them to change the world when really we're the ones, us, you, the person watching this YouTube video, are the ones who have the power to change the world.
Correct.
What's something you wish people
That's
knew
a great
about
take.
you?
That was a great take. About time. They put the fucking keys behind him as well.
What's something you wish people knew about you?
Wow, no one's ever asked me that question before. I'm looking for love in the world, like in all sorts of forms. Love is the fucking answer, like loving each other, loving ourselves, loving the world. And obviously it's not always, like the world's a sad place sometimes.
I didn't expect you to say you were looking for love in the world. For some reason, that made me emotional for a second. But then also being part of a group that condones violence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a heavy question. Thanks. The world is becoming increasingly uninhabitable. Targeted communities just continue to be targeted, racialized.
Like, again, he's dressing, again, in the balaclava, but like, look at his fucking, look at his, let me see if I can find
Yeah, that's a heavy question. Thanks.
Like, look at his body language, he's just, like, very passive still. I agree, and just as with the alt-right being a problem, sometimes the alt-left is a problem, but at least they're not excluding people, it's, like, out of an effort of inclusion.
Just continue to be targeted, racialized violence happening in the world, gendered violence. And for me, for love to be able to truly proliferate in this world, so many of these systems need to be torn down. And so many new ones need to pop up in their place. And I don't know what those new ones are. I don't have an answer for everything.
How do you engage with individuals who don't see eye to eye with Antifa or have a very violent reaction to the words?
But when people are giving him kind of like pushback on shit, he was kind of crumbling.
That is a very good question. I think it's one that people have been trying to answer for a long time. How do we communicate across difference? Another reason why I don't always think showing up in full black bloc garb is the most strategic is because it makes people assume a lot about you. I put on this mask like less than 1% of the time. or something, you know?
Oh, really?
And so many of us are doing so many different types of community organizing work. There's so much more to like building than just fighting against fascists.
That's why you don't really see it that much, and that's why when you do see it, every news organization makes sure they point it out so that way you hear all about it.
What is something that you love about yourself?
But one thing I love about myself is that I care. I care about things. My heart gets warmed when I see people in contact with their capacity to be however they want to be in the world, to do whatever they want to do in the world. It's really hard. It's fucking hard.
Yeah, I appreciate your answers. It seems like you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a neo-Nazi, ask me anything, because the opposite end of the spectrum, it would be so fucking different, and it would be based in such utter nonsense.
Some time to think about.
I'm alt-right.
I may not agree
fascist,
with like everything you stand for, but I think I agree, like for the most part, like just being like a liberal person. I think we both can say that we want the world to be like a better place.
I'm not
He was like the only person really giving pushback. I would have not assumed he was liberal.
a person with like very strong political views. My beliefs are do whatever makes you happy as long as it doesn't hurt other people or yourself.
You're a decent human being, and a cool guy.
Well, thanks.
Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Right back at you.
He comes off incredibly passive. He seems like a very kind, nice fella. Obviously, you don't hear his voice. Obviously, he's dressed in a certain way, but it's meant to show that that shouldn't matter. You know, it's like not about what you look like, it's about what you stand for. I would love to see the opposite now, alt-right end of the spectrum, because that guy is going to be not fucking this guy.